Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network LLC. Educate, enlighten, entertain. And let's not forget mindfulness. And on this episode today, we are going to discuss the rise of America's Broligarchy and what to do about it. And it was written in Time magazine by Lawrence Norden and Daniel I. Weiner. Norden is vice president of the Elections and Government program at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law, and Weiner is director of the Elections and Government program at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law. Now, what's an oligarchy? Oligarchy, and why are we putting BRO in front of the word? As everybody knows, in this current administration's Elon Musk, who is the world's largest, wealthiest person, comes from South Africa. He's not an original American citizen. And he's also one of the largest donors to the current administration's presidential candidate. And this gentleman has been allowed to rampage through the federal government, firing, freezing, and removing and shutting down agencies without any regard for his own conflict of interest. In fact, if they do those things to him, he goes after the judges and wants to impeach him or them or her because they are not doing what his money demands. And he's not even an elected officer or an elected political candidate to our government. But the current president doesn't seem to understand that the only people who belong in government are the ones who are elected into it. Furthermore, this is a corrupting influence. It's called big money, and formerly it was not allowed to be used. It's not the first time big money has been used and abused for particular people and their parties and their members of those parties to take advantage of our government to further their own ends and get what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and punish the rest of the country. Tech billionaires in our country already hold an enormous amount of power because they're wealthy. Of course, they wouldn't have gotten that way if they didn't get it from us first. Nobody makes a lot of money without a little help from the peons. Without us, they are nothing and they can get nothing achieved. So think about that first. And now, because most of the restraints have been removed, they have now been like a bull in a china store. They have run amok, breaking everything in its path. Usually, a president of the United States, their power are checked by balances, or what we commonly called in the holistic world as yin and yang. And these people are elected to represent us, the people. Unfortunately, that's not happening. Or what's happening is that instead of the many, it's just the few. And if you recall your history, and I doubt many of you cannot, Hitler had his own group of oligarchs. Unfortunately, by the time they caught on to what was really happening, it was too late for them. Let us hope you people wake up and smell the coffee while you can still afford it, your hamburger while you can still afford it, and maybe some fruit and vegetables. No, you won't be able to afford it because there won't be any immigrants around to pick it for you, which could be a problem. Before Joseph Biden left office, he recently warned about oligarchs. And others on the internet then put Broligarchy. However, not everything is a doom and gloom. There are some judges who are brave enough to say no to this Musk and to his sidekick and prevent them from doing what they want to do. Unfortunately for these brave people, they're either being impeached or be condemned as criminals and sent to, you guessed it, South America, where all the Nazis and fascists live, when they wanted to get away from the war. And those prisons are notorious, and these people will never get out. Or they'll send them to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, where we used to waterboard the prisoners. Oh, the United States doesn't do things like that? Well, guess what, little ones? We do. We're just as bad as a dictator. When a current administrator who's running this country can call up Putin and have a great conversation with them and decide that they're going to create the Gaza Strip into the Riviera of the Far East after getting rid of everyone. Oh, yes, the Palestinians. How could one can forget and do a sort of ethnic cleansing with, we're not sending any American troops over there to, we're going to send American troops over there. That's right. So how did we get to a point where a billionaire, a tech one, openly runs huge parts of the federal government and steals from the poor to give to the rich? Oh, you haven't heard. They're going to get rid of Medicaid. And the amount of money that they're going to bankrupt Medicaid, they're going to go to Elon Musk, to his space project. Of course, the problem is that space really isn't up for sale yet, is it? And who knows, maybe some of the aliens out there will take a very dim view of Mr. Musk, of going out and claiming the universe, which is really for everybody, not just for spoiled, rotten, narcissus Americans. 3 key changes have contributed to this moment. First, it's the collapse of the legal safeguards that are designed to curb the outside influence of money in elections. 15 years ago, Citizens United, the decision was wealthy donors can give money more direct to the politicians and help them run their political campaigns. Well, everybody knew where that was going, but nobody recognized the white elephant. We haven't seen this degree since the Gilded Age, and we'll go into them too. I have all the names and what they did and why they did and how it affected our U.S. government. Hold on. Thank you. And now, back to the program. Thank you. In 2024, just 10 individual donors were able to supply nearly half of the money raised to support the current administration's candidacy. The total amount of money in the presidential race coming from people who gave at least $5 million more than doubled relative to 2020. While the super PACs these individuals funded and ran were supposed to be separate from the president's actual campaign. That was legal fiction. Musk spent at least $288 million to help elect the current president and become the president's leading surrogate. His PAC took on core functions of the campaign, such as door-to-door canvassing and get out the vote efforts, and he also used his ownership of X to boost pro-current administration content. Before the citizen ruling, none of this would have happened. None of it was legal. Secondly, the current administration has been transformed. Recent decades have seen presidents from both parties erode laws and norms meant to restrain their power, increasingly without this sort of pushback from members of their own party that restrained their predecessors. And yes, let's not forget FDR. In its first weeks in office, the current administration has accelerated the process, issuing unconstitutional executive orders and directives purporting to repeal birthright citizenship and directing OMB to freeze funding for thousands of federal programs in violation of an act of Congress, so even draining Medicaid and getting rid of that altogether. Really? Who is going to help all those thousands of people, many of which cannot go out and work for various and sundry medical and mental reasons? I'd like to see the current administration and must start out from scratch, starting at the bottom. Many years ago, one of my hosts, who's now passed, she and I issued a challenge. We challenged any senator and congressman to live on $150 a month, feeding a family of four and more. Guess what? After one day, they gave up. You know why they gave up? Because they couldn't do it. And yet these are the same people who keep on giving themselves more and more money because they can't afford their current lifestyle on $150,000, and they get free insurance for the rest of their life. That's what you should be upset about. That's what you should try and change, not career politicians. They're not supposed to be career politicians. They're supposed to serve their term and then go home and become something legal, not career politicians. I think you guys are all screwed up. Moving right along. So, not only have they gone into the Treasury Department's payment processing systems, but they have access to sensitive information. And this information is in the hands of what? Kids under the age of 20? Really? Courts have temporarily blocked some of these actions, but ultimate review will be in the hands of the Supreme Court, which itself has taken a chainsaw to legal constraints on the president's power over the executive branch, gutting the independence of key federal agencies and holding that former presidents are immune from prosecution, even for blatantly illegal abuses of power. Shame on you. The combination of unregulated money in politics and expanded presidential power with fewer checks from Congress will be a recipe for more corruption under any president. And there are special dangers combined with the current administration explicitly transactional approach to wielding power. He told you he wanted to be a dictator. What part of that sentence didn't you understand? And don't you also understand that there could be 10, 15 people in government, but a dictator does it by one? He doesn't like company and he doesn't like to share power. There's only one king on that mountain at one time, no one else. And if you don't believe me, go and review your history. I digress. Not only that, this current administration promised pardons for everybody who looted and maimed and even killed, and forgave them, and then had the audacity to blame it on Biden or say that his own people, the Proud Boys, who were wielding weapons thanks to the Rifle Association group, used them on Americans. And he said that they were attacked. Yeah, in self-defense, they deserve what they got, but that's okay with the present administration. They can do no evil. Well, there's a little saying, what goes around comes around. So you better watch out. You better track choice. You better find out whether you're on the good list or the bad list, because things happen and they're coming for you, whether you believe it or not. So the third development is the technological companies, the 7 of them. They represent approximately 1/3 of the value of the S&P 500 and have a market cap greater than any non-US stock market in the world. Many commentators have noted that the president seated the leaders of 3 of these companies, Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg, ahead of cabinet members and other world leaders at his inauguration. Collectively, these 3 men have a net worth of nearly $1 trillion, a value that's approximately 200 times all the money spent in support of the presidential candidates in 2024, which is enough to make anybody rich. But their power is not just in money, it's also, as Isaac Klein has noted, the billionaires given front row inaugural seats were more than just the wealthiest men alive. They were among the biggest player in the so-called attention economy. This is the tech industrial complex that the former president warned in his farewell address, which has increasingly replaced traditional media as the source of political information for Americans, often told on their personal data that these very companies collect, and which is largely unaccountable to the general public for how it can manipulate our understanding of reality. In particular, the combination of legal protection, such as Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act, opaque algorithms, and the lack of regulatory oversight, including over the mining of personal data of users, means that the public often has little sense of how tech companies collect and use information about users or what information is fed to them. So if you have time, go over to time.com. This was published last week, so it's still relatively fresh. Just put in the rise of the Broligarchy and what it means and read the full article, because you need to be prepared for what is going to happen and what you need to do in order to join the resistant groups. Yes, resistant groups. France had them, Greece had them, a lot of European countries had them. And the United States is now going to have them too. In fact, during an opening ceremony, when the United States flag was raised, people started booing. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be booed. I'm just saying this is your country. This is your home, folks. What are you going to do about it? Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lest We Forget Historical, the rise of Broligarchy and what to do about it. And they certainly do tell you what you need to do. It's a we plan, not just one person. And you're going to have to do more than just protest on Facebook or Instagram. You're going to have to talk the walk and walk the talk and stand up and be counted, or you're not going to have a country left. This program is brought to you by several different companies. The first is AI with Ruby, and you can check it out at http:// with Lillian.com. Go over, take a demonstration, take a look, and then sign up for a monthly subscription. Or let me put it this way, sign up for AI that you can truly use without having it subjugated or taken over by Elon Musk and his friends, the high schoolers who he now uses as programmers, and to take over things that he has no business taking over. Also with the obstacles of podcasting. An 8-week, Monday through Friday, 45 minutes, first 20 minutes, lectures, second 20 minutes, interactive, put it into action. You have an opportunity to create 3 15-minute or less podcasts. And then in a 3-week period, you have given the opportunity to present them on a weekly basis. Like it well enough, take an intern position for 6 months, and you might even be invited to join Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Also, other programs you may enjoy is Chatting with Betsy Worcel, who interviews international and national book authors who are well known in their field, in their subject. Check them out. Also, Sports Commentary with Dan Riley, Lillian Cauldwell, The Scam Damnation, that gives you tips and advice to avoid yourself from being scammed or being breached, or just how to protect yourself online, period. We want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. Stay tuned. Further episodes of Lest We Forget Historical will delve into some of the famous and wealthy people who interfered with our government and how they manipulated the system and what it's done to our system. Thank you all very much for listening. And remember, please keep listening. Thank you.